This is one of those interesting picture books. I was going to try and introduce it, but it's beyond introduction. So what I often do with my kids, we just read it and then we talk about it. And this is called The Paradise Garden. It has the most amazing illustrations, so I'll try and leave the pages open for a little bit for the tamariki to have a good look. The noise was driving Peter crazy. The noise of our world. All day and all night and all around it roared. Only one place was there any peace. In the west of the city was a fabulous garden, and there, behind its tall walls and thick trees, it was possible to escape the noise. For Peter, who had lived all his life in narrow streets, it was the closest place to paradise he had ever seen. Surrounded by trees from around the world were quiet lawns and secret places that felt like the middle of the country, where the grass was long and squirrels buried acorns under the bushes. If you shut your eyes, you could still hear the traffic, but it felt far away and unimportant. The air smelled clean with the breath of trees. Hidden by thick bushes, Peter lay back in the grass and floated away into deep forest. He planned to escape so no one would miss him. It was simple. He told his mother he was going on holiday with his father. She was annoyed, but not enough to stop him, not enough to phone his father. That night, Peter slept beneath the stars. The city had dropped to a faint murmur. Foxes hunted through the garden, and owls called out in the dark. No monsters visited Peter's dreams that night. There were no nightmares of running through slowed down time, just peaceful, empty sleep. The first weeks were wonderful. He thought he might get fed up with the garden and that maybe its magic would wear off. But it didn't. He thought about his sister and his friends. He thought about his parents fighting and his father walking out. It all seemed so far away. It was as if the garden wall were a boundary to another world. He bought food in the cafes and washed his clothes in a lotus pond among the tall bamboos. And as he went through the garden, he collected things: a gold ring, a red balloon, and pocketfuls of seeds. And when it rained, there were great glass houses. Beneath their crystal skies, it was forever summer. At night, Peter crept into the palm house to pick bananas and exotic fruits from around the world. He grew to know every part of the garden, from quite forgotten pathways where lovers walked, to wide paths of bright flowers where old ladies sat and painted. He grew to know the animals too. At home he had never been allowed a cat or a dog or even a fish, but here he had dozens of friends. Eventually his money and the bananas ran out, and he had to live on other people's leftovers. But even then he was happy. No one shouted at him. No one told him he was stupid. No one tried to make him do things he couldn't, and no one made him face up to the fact that he would have to go home one day. Life was so peaceful. At night he climbed the tallest tree and looked out at the distant city, sparkling like fallen stars. He walked between tropical palms and swam with brilliant goldfish in a pool of giant water lilies. In the corner of the garden, behind tall brick walls, was the only house where people lived. Peter stood in the shadows by the window and watched the family inside. A fire burned in the grate, turning the room into gold. 2 children played cards on the floor while their parents watched television, and on the carpet an old dog dreamed of its youth. Peter felt a terrible sadness in his heart, a deep loneliness that he realised had been there all his short life. Summer grew weary. Everything slowed down and stopped growing. A fine dust covered the leaves. The flowers turned their heads to the ground, and Peter felt lonely. The leaves turned gold and began to fall, and Peter knew it was time to go home. In the yard behind his house, Peter planted all the seeds he had collected. Nothing at home had changed. The noise still went on, day and night. His mother shouted, the neighbours shouted, and the city roared. But now he had his own paradise garden and knew that he would always have one wherever he went. There's a little note in here at the back with special thanks to Chris and everyone at the Royal Botanic Gardens, Kew, which is in England. Hope you like that story and hope it gives you some ideas about your garden and living in the country and how lucky we are to have that paradise around us all the time.